What is going on, everybody? This is Dr. Damon Silas on my first Facebook Live. Never done this thing before, so I have no idea how it works. Must admit, I'm slightly anxious because this is new. But I vowed to myself that I would actually do this today because today is December 19th, and it marks the 26th year that my sister was murdered. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be able to offer you all some information, especially, oh, hey, Aunt Sean. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about grief and loss, especially during the holiday season, because I understand how it can be for some people. And, as I said, I actually experienced a loss around the holidays on this day 26 years ago, my sister, Nikki Agnetta. And since then, I've just gotten into the psychology field. I was really interested in helping people through their grief and loss, through their mourning. And so I've been doing this work as a psychologist for 16 years. And hey, y'all. All right, cool. I love it. Yeah, so that being said, I actually put together like a webinar of all sorts of different slides and stuff, but I don't know if I really want to be that formal. I really just want to have a conversation with you guys about grief, loss, and all that good stuff. So like I said, I'm actually going to pull up some of my notes because I want to make sure that I get it all in. But again, I talk about some of my story through my book, From Morning to Night, Overcoming Loss. That's my first book. And then my second book is What's Your Action Plan? 6 Powerful Ways to Get Unstuck in Your Life Now. And that's really more for the reader. So it's less memoir as the first book is, and more tangible action items that you can take to help get yourself unstuck. Because as I said, I get it, when we're lost, when we're depressed, when we're down in the dumps, when we're blue, we lack energy, we don't feel like doing anything. And hopefully that book can give you some tangible things that you can use in your everyday life to just work through your grief and your loss. I will say this, it is a process. So be gentle with yourself. Make sure that you practice self-compassion. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, I want you to just imagine what your life would be like if you were able to work through your loss. If you had a tangible tool or something that could help you work through your loss, would it feel like there was a future of hope or light or love again? And wouldn't that make things better for you? So that's really what this is all about. One of the quotes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's a grief expert. She had been working actually with people who are in hospice care, which is people who are at the end of their lives. And what she noticed in all of her research was this kind of typical picture of grief and mourning that we now hear about. But what she said was that the reality is that you will grieve forever. You'll not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss that you have suffered, and you will be whole again, but you will never be the same. Nor should you be the same, nor would you want to. And I love this quote because it's not saying that we're going to get back to this pre-loss normal. It's how do we take this loss and integrate it into who we are and how we are now. A lot of times what I hear people say in my work is, I want to feel like I felt before. Well, the truth of the matter is you won't. You won't. There will always be a hole. There will always be a void. You'll always miss that person. Here I am 26 years later, and there are days and times and periods of each day or some days where I get sad, or I think about my sister and I might tear up, or my dad or my nana or whoever it may be, and I tear up and I get sad, and that's okay. Like the point is, it is a process. And just because you feel an emotional reaction or response to something, and it could be an external trigger, It could be a song that you heard on the radio. It could be a scent that you smelled that reminded you of that person's cooking or something that you all would make together. It could be, just seeing a commercial and it bringing up some stuff in you, and that's okay. Like sometimes we tend to get down on ourselves, like I shouldn't be feeling X, Y, or Z. Why not? I ask you, why not? Why shouldn't you? Who says you shouldn't be feeling those things? I don't know where we get that idea that we should or shouldn't be feeling certain things in our processes, but that's not correct. That's not accurate. I love, there's a quote that says, just don't be a should head. Stop shoulding all over yourself. Like, stop telling yourself I should or shouldn't do. Now, that's not good. It's not healthy. Not only is it not good for you, but it's not good for everybody else around you. So that being said, just allow your process to happen. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she talked about the 5 stages of grief, and some people say there are 7. Some people, you can look around on Google, you can find all these different experts saying that there are different stages. I'm going to talk about just the 5 that she discussed, which is in an acronym DABDA, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression or withdrawal, and acceptance. So if you think about denial, it's that sense of when that person is no longer here physically with us, it's hard to even understand or fathom that they are not here, that they're not here to call. They're not here to go over their house, to hang out with, to eat with, whatever it may be. There's this sense of denial that is there that you don't want to, in your mind, your brain has a hard time integrating the fact that they are no longer here, especially if it's a sudden death, but really any death. I was just talking to a good friend of mine yesterday who was discussing losing a family member of his recently. And he said, even though we knew that, he was dying, that it still doesn't make it any easier. So I want you all to understand that it doesn't matter if the person had been going through this process of dying for months or years, or if it was sudden, there's still that part of your brain that has a really hard time integrating it into your new awareness. So that's the first part. The anger is, you just get mad that they're no longer around. Maybe there's something that you wanted to say to them. Maybe you were still angry at them about something and then you were never able to express it. Maybe you get angry at God or whoever you believe in for taking that person away from you. Maybe you just get angry that, in my case, my anger was more so directed at the person who took my sister's life, right? And so that anger can look very different for each person, but just know that that is a part of the process. And let me say this, I'm sorry, I got to go back, because even as I talk about this DABDA process, it's not linear, and you don't have to feel all these things. Like, we don't have to go through each of these steps to go through a mourning and grieving process. It is all relative. It's all what your process is about. So what my process looked like may not be what yours looks like, and that's okay. You might say, I never got angry, or, I never was in denial. Like I was able to integrate it into my everyday way of life immediately, and that's okay. So just because you may not feel certain things doesn't mean you're doing this wrong. There's no wrong way to do mourning. There's no wrong way to grieve. All right. There may be handbooks out there, but those are just rough guides and estimates about what people tend to feel. So that being said, going back to DABDA. So the next one is bargaining. So bargaining with a higher power, bargaining, with yourself. Like, if I promise that I will never drink again, if, I promise I will never do X, Y, or Z again, if I could just have that person back for one more day. If only you could give me that person's presence back for one more day, I would love that. And so you start to kind of bargain with a higher power, or even yourself and in your own actions and in your own behaviors of what you would give or what you wouldn't give to have that person back for one more day, just to talk to them one more time, to interact with them, to touch them that one last time, right? So that's the bargaining piece. The next piece is depression or withdrawal. So this is just feeling blue, feeling sad, not having a lot of energy. What I see with a lot of people who are going through loss in therapy is they don't even have the energy to get up and get out of bed. They don't want to get out of bed. And I tell them that's okay. Like, you may have times when you just don't feel like doing anything. Cool, don't. Listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to what your mind is trying to tell you. And if your mind is saying, you know what, you need a mental health day today, you need to take a break, then cool, do that, please. You owe that to yourself and in your process. So, really take those moments that you need to just grieve and be. Some of you may have full-time jobs, and I get it. Like, it's hard to even take time off from work. Hopefully you have somebody who's understanding when you might need to even leave a little bit early, or maybe you just need to take an extended lunch break, when you're feeling that way, feeling a wave of emotion. And I would urge you, and I'm going to talk a little bit more later about this. I'm going to talk about the action steps and the action plan later, but I want to encourage you to just take those moments and take that time to yourself and practice being in the now and being with those emotions. We tend to push them away. And when we do that, it's like the beach ball that, if we try to push it underneath the water, what's going to happen with that beach ball? It's going to pop right on back up to the surface, and probably with more force than before. So that's just, our emotions are always a call to action. And the more that we try to push them down, the stronger that they're going to come back up to the surface. So if we just start to practice being with them, then we can watch them ebb and flow. Just like with each wave that comes in on a beach, it ebbs and it flows. Just our emotions are never permanent. They're never permanent. They're always changing. And even if there's an underlying theme or feeling of depression, even within that depressive state, there are different levels of that feeling. There are different states of depression that you can feel simultaneously. So that being said, the last thing is acceptance. And acceptance is getting to the place of that person is gone and no longer will be here, and I will no longer be able to call them, talk to them, reach out to them, hear their voice again. And I choose to be okay with that. Now, choosing to be okay with that doesn't mean you accept all the things that surround their death or surrounded their death. I could choose to be okay with my sister no longer being here and still be upset by the fact that she was murdered, right? So it's not mutually exclusive. Like, you can have both simultaneously, but it's really just about an acceptance that this person is no longer here, and how do you then start to put that into your everyday life, make sense of it. And even I would actually add to acceptance, purpose. How do you even step into your purpose and what you're here for? Because I know that for a lot of us, our purpose is in our pain. And we have passion in our pain. So that the deeper we're hurt, the more that we're able to help other people, the more that we're more passionate about helping other people. So I actually posted something on Instagram the other day about kind of just being in our darkness, because in our darkness, there's a gift, and it's hard to see it, especially when it's very new and very fresh for people. So if loss is very new and fresh for you right now, forgive me for saying that, and it will make sense eventually. But know that there's always a purpose in your pain, whether it's just learning how to take care of yourself, whether it's helping other people work through their own stuff, but there's always something that we can get out of our pain. And again, I've expressed this multiple times already, but I'm going to say it again. Grief is a process, y'all. Like, it doesn't happen overnight, nor is there a finish date. There is not a finish date. This is not like a race where you get to the finish line and you can say, yay, you know, like, I'm victorious over my grief. No, that's not it. Like, get that out of your head right now, because that's not possible, right? So what is possible is you, again, learning how to cope with and be with that void, be with that hole, be with that loss in a way that works not only for you, but for everybody else around you. So one of the things that I wanted to say to you all is, oh, hey, everybody. Sorry, I've been flipping back and forth through my little slideshow, so I didn't even see all these folks. What's going on, y'all? So good to see everybody. Thanks for joining. Y'all make me feel special. But so one of the myths that we have around grief and loss is the best model for overcoming loss is to be on medication, right? How many people have I gotten in my practice who they had seen a psychiatrist prior to coming to my office, and that psychiatrist did exactly what they knew to do, right? And they gave that person a medication for their depression. Now, when you experience a loss, if you don't feel a sense of depression, I would say there's something going on, right? Like, I would encourage you to feel whatever it is you're feeling. And to mask it with a medication, and this is by no means saying don't take medication if you're a PCP or your psychiatrist or whoever it is prescribes it. However, I will say that it's not always, nor does it need to be, the first line of defense. One of the first lines of defenses is to just be with the emotions that come up. So the reframe of that is you can work through and overcome loss without medication. I am living proof of that. It took time. It took a lot of therapy. It took individual therapy. It took group therapy. It took weekly analysis. I think I was going through my own psychoanalysis for 3 years, 3 or 4 times a week. But that was what I was doing then. I'm not saying that you need that. I'm going to come up to the next myth, but so I say all that to say it does take work. However, medication is not always necessary as the first line of defense. Now, if you find yourself just unable to get out of bed for 30, 60 days for an extended period of time and you just can't go through the motions anymore, then I would say let's go ahead and consider and think about what might be best for you at that point. So second myth, to overcome this loss, I have to wait for a long time. Now, the reframe is you don't have to wait a long time to feel good, positive, or neutral. So it actually reminds me of, I was working with somebody who had, this is relevant in some way. I'm going to figure out how to tie this all together. But I was working with a young man who had a dog phobia. And I should have clarified it at the beginning of our work together that the goal was not for him to love dogs. Because towards like the middle of our work together, he was like, but I don't like dogs. I don't want to like dogs. I was like, that's not the goal. The goal is that you just feel neutral about them, right? And so even with our losses, it's not that you're going to feel good about having this void, but if you can at least feel neutral or have those moments and start to recognize those positive moments in between, then that's what we want to do. So it's not about like just acting as though those feelings don't exist and saying, oh, I'm just going to put on a happy face and, be positive all the time. Like that's not actually a very good thing. So that being said, it's really about just getting to more of a neutral space, if not recognizing those moments of positivity in between. So the myth number 3 is it probably takes years in therapy to make this work, not to mention a lot of money. I hear you. I did it. Now, when I was in undergrad, because that's when I first started my therapy, my therapy kind of journey, it was free. And actually, I can say it was free because I got a full ride to undergrad, thankfully. So I wasn't actually paying for it. But for everybody else, you may have to come out of pocket to pay for therapy. And as I did when I was going through my analysis, and again, that was 4 days a week at like $150 a pop. I don't even know how I paid for it now that I think of it. Student loans. So that's why I'm still in debt. But anyway, I digress. So, a lot of people think, though, I need to be in therapy forever. And that's okay. Like, going to see somebody on a weekly basis, there's never an issue with it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So you only need a small amount of time and even a smaller investment to make this work. And I'm going to give you guys some tools to help you get closer to that space. Now, again, none of this is a substitute for therapy. I just wanted to give you some tools and tangible things that you can hold on to, especially during this holiday season. So that leads me to, let me come back. Yeah. Hey, Melinda, and I'm just reading what you wrote, and absolutely. So yeah, and that sometimes, like you said, that hurt doesn't necessarily go away. But if we can just find ways to maybe even minimize it, or put it, just make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more doable on a day-to-day basis, that's the goal. So I'm going to talk about this action plan that I discussed in my book, and hopefully this can help you all out there. So the first and action is an acronym. Let me back up. Action is an acronym that I was able to come up with kind of based on Hal Elrod's The Miracle Morning. He came up with life savers, and savers is an acronym for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or writing. And he talks about doing those 6 things first thing in the morning for 10 minutes each, first hour of the morning. And that can just help jumpstart your day. And so when I was coming up with this plan, I thought, how can I come up with something that's helpful for people and understandable? And the one thing that I did throughout my loss and making sense of it all was I constantly was in action. I was constantly trying to seek out ways to not only help myself, but help others. And even on those days when I didn't feel like doing anything, that is a form of action. So sometimes, a lack of kind of physical action is still action in and of itself that is needed. That being said, the A is for affirmations or affirmations. So affirmations are repeating a phrase, an I am phrase to yourself, even if you don't believe it initially, right? So if you think about it, in your grief, in your loss, you probably have said to yourself, I don't think I'll ever get over this. You may have said to yourself, I'll never, be whole again. I'm always going to be sad. I'm always going to be hurt, whatever it is. But you've repeated some of these things to yourself, and I get it. But how can we say something to ourselves that feels a little bit more empowering? So if we say, I am resourceful and I have all that I need to help me through this loss, how different does that feel than I'm so helpless right now, right? How about I let go of the limiting belief that I will be unable to handle this? I have the resources, support, and strength that I need. So, from this point forward, I'm maintaining the unwavering belief that I am a resourceful and strong individual, and I'm continuing to get better every day. I actually, in my hypnosis work with people, I talk to them about saying something to themselves 10 times a day. And that is each and every day in every way I'm getting better and better. Now, you can substitute better for stronger, more confident, whatever it is, you can substitute it, but saying to yourself each and every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better, something along those lines, because we want to trick the mind into believing that you're constantly improving, and you are already well on that trajectory and on that path. So our minds don't understand the difference between past and present. Because if I were to ask you right now, think of a time when you were really sad, what that felt like, you would probably be able to bring that up like that, right? Or if I said, think about a time in the future when you're going to have to speak in front of a group of people and you strongly dislike speaking in front of people, what would happen? You'd probably feel something in your chest, in your stomach, some sort of, so that just is to show that our brains don't understand the difference between past and present, past and future. So if we can trick it into believing what we want it to believe in the present, then that's exactly what we do, and that's the point of saying something in an I am statement. All right. Affirmations are something that you ask in the form of a question, and you ask it rhetorically. So you say, why is it so easy for me to be resourceful during difficult times? Why is it so easy for me to find hope in despair? Why is it so easy for me to access peace even in a dark time? Why is it so easy? Why is it so effortless? And it's not that it always is, but again, it's about tricking the mind to believe that that's exactly where you are. Man, it's so easy for me to find peace even in darkness, right? So that's the A of the action plan. The C is more about creativity, so expressing yourself. When we get stuck in our grief, in our mourning process, we tend to kind of stay in the frontal lobe of things, and which is just, we try to logic and rationalize our way out of our grief. That doesn't work. Like our logical part of our thinking is 10% of our thinking. The rest is the creative, right brain stuff. And so what we want to do is really get to that part of the brain and really access that stuff. So being creative is something that can be very helpful. I don't know if some of you saw maybe earlier on Facebook today, I posted a rap that I wrote many years ago, back when I was an MC. Microphone check, 1 2 1 2. Anyway, but yeah, so this is something that I wrote when I was in that dark space of missing my sister, and it was just a rap that I performed at a scholarship raising party that we had for her, and it was very helpful in getting my emotions out and making sense of them. So I say that to say, practice using your creativity. I've spoken to people on my podcast who talked about really accessing parts of themselves that they didn't even know existed. They're able to paint and draw and write poetry or whatever it may be that they weren't doing before their loss. So again, even in that dark period, there's an opportunity for you to find things out about yourself that you didn't even know existed. So whether it's painting, writing, drawing, poetry, dance, music, movement, express yourself, y'all. Express yourself, right? You didn't logic your way into this, so why would you try to logic it out? So exercising that creative part. The T is for talking. Talk to a professional. There are people like myself who are out there who are trained to do this work, to help you through whatever it is you're going through. So many times people say, like, I know why I'm sad. Why do I need to talk to anybody? Why not? Like, we are connective human beings. Like, we are here to connect with each other. So when we just stay in our own minds, and that can be a very dangerous place for us, when we stay up here and we don't share it with other people, especially professionals who are there to help us through this stuff, it's not going to be good. So find a local therapist, find somebody online, y'all. I do online therapy. There are so many people who do online therapy right now. Live Health Online, what is it, Amwell, there's Talkspace, there's BetterHelp, which I just applied to. So there's all sorts of online platforms that you can go to. No excuse really for you not to see somebody and talk to somebody. So that's the talking part. The introspection is I, and that is all about looking inward. So a lot of times we tend to blame other people for our stuff, for our pain, for our misery, for our hurt. I could have easily said, I blame this guy or these two guys for taking my sister away from me, and stayed in that space. But that wouldn't have allowed me to do the work that I needed to do for myself, to say, wait, something's not right within me. I knew that when I got to undergrad, when I got to Howard University, that I just wasn't operating at full throttle, and I knew that I needed to get somebody to help me out and through that space. So starting to do that really hard work of saying, you know what, I could benefit from talking to somebody, because what I'm dealing with, it's not going away, right? So stay away from the blame game, y'all. Don't blame everybody else for your issues. Don't blame it on lack of transportation. Don't blame it on this. Don't blame it on that. Don't blame it on whatever it is. But start to really look at what you can do, because this is about empowering yourself. Too often we give our power to everybody else. It's like giving somebody a remote when you don't want them to change the channel. So keep that remote. Be honest with yourself on what you're feeling, what you're emotionally experiencing, and how it affects your everyday life. So really starting to look at that. Now I'm moving on to the O. So the how much time are we in? Okay, so we're about 30 minutes. We're good. So the O is for openness. I like to call it we-ness. And that goes back to the that we are naturally beings who are made to connect. In this age of being connected online, we're tremendously disconnected from each other. And I'm not saying that to say I'm not pointing fingers, because as many as I point out, they also come back to me. So as connected as we are online, we tend to get disconnected with everybody else. We don't reach out and call people like we used to. We don't, we'll text somebody, which is fine, which is great. And we'll messenger somebody on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But it's not the same as talking. It's just not. I'm fortunate that I'm in a position where every day I get to talk and interface with people on a daily basis. And it's a beautiful thing, because even hearing people talk and say, wow, I never said this to anybody else, or wow, that feels so good for me to get that off of my chest. And it constantly amazes me, like, wow, you never said that? Like, and people are, I just love the resiliency of the human spirit. And the strength of the human spirit, just because when I ask people that, they're like, no, I never said that, but I needed to, and it's out now. Like, now we can work on that. Anyway, so when I talk about the openness, it's really about sharing with other people your experience, your story, your loss, your grief, because what I found, and what you will find if you haven't already, is that the more you share, the more people will open up. I remember when, whenever you just talk to people about losing somebody's going to say, oh my goodness, I too lost a loved one. How many times has that happened for you, right? And there's beauty in community, and that's really what this is about, is creating a community of people, a community of support around you. And I bet you, as alone as you tend to feel, because I know, like, we isolate ourselves in the very moments that we need connection. But for whatever it is you're feeling, somebody else is out there experiencing the same thing. So I would encourage you not to be an oversharer, because there's a difference between, y'all know, everybody out there knows that person who's an oversharer. Like sometimes you're like, all right, that was way too much, y'all. Pull back on it. So don't share like everything with everybody, but find those certain people who you can really trust, who can help you through whatever it is you're going through. I don't know if any of you have heard of Brené Brown, but she's a wonderful author, and she talks a lot about the power of vulnerability, the power of opening up. She has a book called Daring Greatly, as well as some other books, but that's really what it's about, is being vulnerable. You know, it's a scary place to be. Like, I didn't want to put a book out. I really didn't. That I started writing my book as more of a memoir and or a journal entry. And when I started telling people what I was doing, they were like, yeah, put it out as a book. And I was like, oh, okay, now I'm accountable for this. And I don't necessarily want to be. But and sometimes there's still that question of, did I do the right thing? You know, but it's in our vulnerability and in our ability to share with others that if we can help at least one person learn and grow and feel not as alone, then that's what it is about, y'all. Oh, you know, there was something else too that I wanted to say, because one of the quotes that I had for the O and the openness is, when you selectively numb human emotions and feelings, so like when we push away our pain, our hurt, our grief, you also numb joy and happiness. Now, it makes sense, but like reading that, I don't remember where I read that, but I loved it, because the more that we try to push away one thing, the more that we numb everything else, all of our experiences, all of our emotional experiences. So don't numb it. Don't numb it, because the less that you numb it, the more that you can feel the range of human emotion. Like, we're human and we're meant to feel a range of emotion, not just one or two things. So the N is nowness, y'all. So this is, I love this one. It's more about meditation. It's about mindfulness. It's about being in the present moment. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, which is when we get lost in our grief, our trauma, our sadness, our pain, our hurt, we tend to be taken either to the past or to the future. You know, we think about, oh, I don't want to go through another holiday without that person, you know, because I know how it was last year, so I'm sure it's going to be the same way this year. Who says that? Like, how do you know? How do you know? You know, so the more that you practice being in the now and just being present with your emotional state, the more that you start to have control over your emotions, and less your emotions having control over you. I'm going to say that one more time. The more that you have control over your emotions, the less that your emotions have control over you. Practicing meditation, mindfulness, just being present is so powerful. And the more that you do it, the stronger that muscle in the mind becomes, and the stronger that muscle in the mind becomes, the easier it becomes to access. The easier it becomes to access, the more that you can call upon it when it shows up. Whenever sadness shows up, oh, there's that sadness again. If I'm listening to a song and it brings up sadness, oh, there's my sadness again. If I'm listening to that same song 2 days later and I can smile at it, oh, there's that happiness again. Awesome. No need to judge. No need to put it down. No need to say it's right or wrong. It just is, right? So just be present with your emotions. Something that you could do for mindfulness is even taking note of 5 things around you that you can see above eye level. You know, so what are 5 things that you can see above eye level? What are 3 things that you can hear? What are 2 things that you can smell? What's something that you can taste? If I could, you know, have you describe what this bottle feels like, how would it feel? If I couldn't see it, if I didn't know what it looked like, how would you describe it? You know, so those are things that can just reorient us back to the present moment. There's another acronym that I love, which is GLAD, and it's Rick Hansen came up with it. And he has a book called Hardwiring Happiness. And that's for the G is for gratitude. So on a daily basis, checking in on what you're grateful for. I have my gratitude journal right over there every morning, writing something in there. You know, you can write one thing, three things, five things, but practicing writing what you're grateful for, you know, making at least a mental note, if not writing it down. What did you learn? That's the L. What did you learn that day? You know, we always learn something each day, whether it's about ourselves or somebody else or the world around us. I'm just sticking with what you can learn about yourself or somebody else rather than the world around us, because I can go down a rabbit hole. But really taking note of what you can learn on a daily basis, or what you did learn on a daily basis. The accomplishments that you had that day. I say that in the simplest of ways possible, y'all, especially when you're grieving. An accomplishment for you that day might be getting out of bed. An accomplishment for you that day might be taking a shower. An accomplishment for you that day might be crying. Actually, I don't want to use crying as an example, because if you cry, you cry. You know, that's not something you accomplish. But it's just something that you're able to do a little bit more than maybe you were to do another day. And every day is different, right? But just taking note of something that you accomplished. And finally, the D is for delight, of that GLAD acronym. What do you find delight in every day? You know, you go outside, you look outside your door, your window. What is there that you can find delight in? You can even go outside at night and look up in the sky right now, and the moon is beautiful. You know, find delight in some of the leaves that have fallen from the trees, and just how amazing nature can be. So there's always an opportunity, right? We tend to overlook those opportunities. Really being intentional about taking note of these things. There's an app that I love, and I talk to everybody about it when I'm talking about nowness. So that is Insight Timer, and that's INSIGHT Timer. Y'all, it has like 12,000 different apps. I mean, meditations, I'm sorry. And oh snap, somebody's getting a Christmas gift today. Sorry, my phone just told me. Anyway, but it has over 12,000. Let me see, I'm pulling it up right now. So like 12,000 different meditations, and it's free. It's all free. You can choose guided meditations. You can choose to just do it on silent. And you can choose anywhere. If you do silent, you can do anywhere from 1 minute all the way up to 24 hours. So if you want to meditate for 24 hours and be like a Buddhist monk, please do so. I will not be doing that. But that's just a way that you can access meditation. A lot of people say, I can't meditate, my mind is always racing. I say perfect. That just means you need it even more. Our minds are designed to race. Our minds are designed to constantly have thoughts. We can't stop our thoughts from happening on a daily basis. But if we can learn how to tame that monkey mind, that monkey brain, that very primitive part of the brain that keeps us wired for anything that might happen and might be a threat to us, then all we want to do is just quiet it, right? So we don't want to get pulled by every thought that we have. And meditation really just helps you to be present with the breath. All it is, the very short and sweet of it, and I'm really minimizing this, but it really is just focusing on your breathing. The full inhale and exhale, and focusing on that. So that is a way that you can get in the now. So that being said, y'all, I think that was the action plan. So, I've talked to you all about all sorts of different tools and tips and techniques. As I said, I talk about not only my journey in my book From Morning to Night, Overcoming Loss, which was primarily written, the basis of that really was the loss of my sister. And then, What's Your Action Plan? 6 Powerful Ways to Get Unstuck in Your Life Now. I actually have those 2 books right now at 50% off through my Square store. So if you go to my Square store, I think I put a link up on my Facebook page today. So since we're on Facebook, that means we're following each other. Go to my Square page, and you can get my books for 50% off today by entering the code Nikki 2018. And again, that's just in recognition of her. So that's one thing, you know, and then there's the tapping. I think I talked to you all about, I didn't even talk about tapping, y'all. How do I do this whole thing and not talk about tapping? Y'all know that's my thing. So, but, you know, I don't even know what I would love to do, honestly. Like maybe I'll just do another Facebook Live where I teach you all a little bit about tapping. You know, I had a client of mine earlier this year. She came in and she had just lost her daughter. And I taught her tapping. And she was like, oh my goodness, like I feel at least calm. You know, like her mind kind of slowed down in those moments. And I'm telling you, on a daily basis, I see this happen again and again and again, no matter what people are dealing with. I actually had a guy the other day. It was kind of funny, but we were working on just like how his pain and trauma showed up in his body, and it was in his chest. And he said he hadn't been able to breathe clearly for, you know, years. And so we did like one quick round of tapping. And after he looked at me, and the look that he gave me was like, he looked at me like, did you just do something to me? Like, I feel like you just put some sort of voodoo hex thing on me or whatever. And he was like, I can't access that feeling. And I said, well, when was the last time you remember not having it there? And he was like, I can't. So I say all that to say it's just a very powerful tool, including for grief. And it really just helps you to calm the mind and body, right? So I would love to be able to offer that to you all, you know, whether it's in that group setting. I would love to actually be able to offer you guys individual sessions if I had like an online platform set up. I would love to do that. But what I do have for you in the meantime is if you go to my website, which is www.damonsilaspsychology.com, I actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a link, a button that says, click here for a free grief and loss meditation. And that's exactly what it is. So you can get a free grief and loss meditation that I recorded. And it actually, I give you a link to not only the audio of that, but then there's a link to the script. So if you wanted to read it to yourself, you can do that as well. But I hope you got some value from everything that I've said, and that you get some value from going on that website, www.damonsilaspsychology.com, getting your free grief and meditation or grief and loss meditation. Yeah, so that is that. Actually, what I want to do, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Let me see. Now, what I did was, oh, good. I'm glad you appreciated that, Vanessa. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any questions, but if not, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you all so much for joining. This is my first live, so like I said, I was like nervously anxious and excited about it. But this was really about helping you all, because I get it, you know, especially if you're dealing with this whole, you know, process of grief, loss, and mourning throughout the holiday season. So my gift to you is not only this, but that grief and loss meditation. Make sure you go get it. And I'm probably going to see you guys on another one, because I want to be able to teach you guys some EFT tapping and ways to to help deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Yeah. So, hey, everybody. Okay. All right. Oh. What's up, Tim? All right. So, y'all, peace, love, and light. Sending much love to you guys. Oh, I'm also going to be posting something on, sorry, I keep forgetting to tell you guys. Check out my podcast, which is coming out. It comes out every Thursday, From Mourning to Action, powerfully working through your loss. So that is all about each week I interview somebody who has gone through a loss and talk to them about their own action plan. So what I just went through earlier, and I talk to them about what they've gone through to work through their loss and continue to work through their loss. So the purpose of that podcast is really to give people hope, especially when you're in a dark space. If I can give you hope, and I interview people from, anywhere from my mom, who is coming on tomorrow because I wanted to have her on right around the death date of my sister, which is, just 1 day difference. So that's going to be a great one. Be sure to check it out. It's on iTunes. So subscribe to that. Even if you wanted to be a part of it, if you want to share your story, I would love to have you on. All you need to do is have access to a Zoom account, and then we'll connect that way. But yeah, check out the podcast. I'll be coming out with a PTSD course on Teachable. It's actually all done, so I just need to launch it. But that's, again, it's really about ways that I can continue to support you all through whatever it is you may be going through. And I think that's it. I think I covered everything. I covered a lot. So I hope I didn't overwhelm you guys. But again, thank you so much for joining. Peace, love, and light, y'all. All right. Take care. Bye.